America's a weird place. I didn't really understand that until I, visited some other places. And, it's a country founded by prudes, like people that were, persecuted for being straight up fucking prudes. It's kind of crazy. And, like, I really feel like that's in our culture, too. It's like other people are so much more sexually open and whatever. And here in America, like, it's just, like, become a thing here, you know what I mean? Like, acceptable, it's pushed out there and whatever. And people are, doing different stuff. And I thought the thought of, like, tossing a salad was never really up my alley. And I actually made fun of a couple friends that, like, they're like, yeah, dude, my girlfriend ate my ass. And I was like, your girlfriend ate your ass, dude? Like, yeah. Did you make out with her afterwards? And he's like, well, in the moment. And I'm like, oh, you never go ass to mouth. And that's when he was like, you never go ass to mouth unless you're there to eat ass. And I'm like, ugh. And I was like, did you return the favor? He goes, fuck no. And I'm like, that's fucked up, bro. I was like, she got back there and that, and you don't even want to return the favor? He goes, she didn't ask. I'm like, well, all right, that's fair. And then a couple years passes by, and I had been in management at this particular place for a little while, and, like, one of the employees, she was, like, really, really attractive, like, to the point where I was like, this girl's out of my league. And, I tried to play by the books and, like, not date employees. And I eventually left there and started working as a general manager of a bar that was just right down the street. And I started taking over there and, taking a new role on there and running the business and stuff. And maybe like 6 months goes by and that girl comes in. And I'm like, cool, hi, nice to see you. Let me buy you a beer. This is, I took over this place, blah, 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 blah. Not really bragging, but just, just talking to her, catching up, We were like acquaintances at work, like never really friends that like hung out outside of work or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, she was beautiful, like just drop dead gorgeous, you know what I mean? But, she hung out for a second. And she's like, when are you done here? And I was like, I just got to do a little bit of paperwork. I'll be done in about 10 minutes. And she's like, oh, well, I'm going to go down to the bar that's a couple doors down from you. She goes, come over after you get off. If you want to hang out, that is. And I was like, sure, absolutely. And I'm just kind of like, all right, let's take this in strides. We used to work together, whatever. There's no way that she's interested in me. And so, maybe it's because I have low self-esteem. I don't know. But anyways, I finish up my paperwork. I go down there. And, she's actually there with this other girl. One of her friends worked there for a little while together. And then she moved on to other things. But, yeah, also, very beautiful. But, like, there's just a screw loose with that one. Like, I don't know. She had, like, that blank stare in her eye. Like, man, like, maybe she just did too many drugs a long time ago. Did like one too many hits of acid and just didn't return back. I don't know. But both the girls are like in their early 30s. But I mean, single, beautiful. And not to say like that's a red flag or anything, but and I'm not trying to be, I don't know. Everybody has their own things. And it's like when you get older and you see really beautiful women that are, in their early to mid 30s and they're not with anybody and they haven't dated anybody for a while, and then you begin to think it's like, well, maybe they're focusing on their profession, or maybe they're just being that independent woman, maybe they got a dog, a cat, they're cool with that, you know what I mean? But it's always like, I don't know, something in the back of my mind is always wondering, like, what the fuck's up? I mean, same thing with me. I have my problems too, but whatever. Anyways, so we're all there having drinks and stuff, and then, I really liked, I'm not going to say her name. I don't really want to get that out there or anything like that, but Let's just a made up name. Let's just say this girl's name is Amanda. We'll call her Amanda, and we'll call her friend that was also there, we'll call her Brittany. Okay? These are not the girls' names, and hopefully I keep this shit straight. So I came there to see Amanda, but her friend Brittany was there as well. And her friend Brittany also had started working at this other job, and she brought a coworker. And, you know, obviously I thought that maybe those two were dating. He was, I don't know, he was a weird dude, but that was just the city that we were in. Like, it's just a weird, funky ass city. But anyways, we're there drinking and shit. And then Amanda was like, yeah, Brittany has a crush on you and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I came here for Amanda. You know what I mean? If that was even a possibility. And now that I've had a few drinks, the courage has built up. And I think it's a possibility. So anyways, she goes in to grab some drinks. And I was just like, all right, I'll be right back. I'm going to go inside and go to the bathroom. I did. But once I was done, I rolled back over to the bar. And it was a busy night. So she hadn't quite got served yet. So I was like, here, let me help you with the drinks. And I ordered some couple extra drinks, you know, some extra shots for the table. And that's when I told her, I was like, you know, Brittany's cool and all, but I kind of digged you. Are you seeing anybody? And she was like, me? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, no, you like me? And I was like, yeah. She goes, oh, okay. She goes, I didn't know you felt that way. And I was just like, I'm saying it now. And she was like, all right. She goes, I'm into that. Come outside. So we go outside. We take the shots with everybody. And then Brittany and that other dude are like, I don't know. They're talking. And I guess he was wanting Amanda. I'm like, nah, bro. She mine now. You can keep Brittany over there. One screw loose, Brittany. Anyways, so we're there. And I was just like, I lean over to Amanda and I was like, let's go to the bar next to us. It's this whole like street of bars, and I was like, let's separate ourselves from these two. Now that I have her interest, I'm like, this is awesome. I can't really believe it because she's super hot, and you know, I'm just a normal ass fucking pudgy ass dude, you know? I'm like, whatever. Cool. So we go to another bar and we're there, and you know, as a person who ran a bar and a bartender currently, like, I can't stand when people make out at the bar. Like, I think it's like, yo, just leave and get a room. So we go into that bar, we have a couple shots, and then we become those people, just making out at the bar. And I catch a look from one of the bartenders, and I'm like, all right, it's time to go. I was like, this is my move. We gotta go. So I'm like, Amanda, you know, we should get out of here. Do you live close by? Do you need a ride? And I knew she didn't have a car, so I was like, what up? And she's like, yeah, I need to get a ride. I'm just going to take a Lyft. And I was like, no, that's no big deal. Like, I'll take you home. It's all good. And she goes, really? You'll take me home? And I'm like, yeah, let's go back to your place for a little bit. And she goes, oh, you want to come upstairs? And I was like, only if that's okay with you. And she goes, yeah, we'll see. I'm like, all right, tight. This is what's up. So, at the time I was driving a Mazda 8. Or, sorry, a Mazda 3. It was a 2008. Sorry. So, you know, it's a coupe. It's not a very big car. And, I mean, it's a 4-door. Whatever, dude. Judge me not. So we get in the car, and she just, like, starts making out with me. I'm like, cool. All right. And then she reaches down and pulls my seat all the way back. And I'm like, I've now am no longer in control of this situation. I've invited a she-beast into my car, and I'm about to get ravaged. And I'm here for it. Yeah. So she rips my pants down all the way down. I've never had this happen. Yeah, I've gotten roadhead before, but never quite like this. I wasn't driving. I didn't even have time to put the keys in the ignition yet when she's already ripped my pants all the way down. And she starts giving me a blowjob, and like it's just like she's real intense, and she's like getting in there, and she's like not neglecting the boys either, dude. Everything's great. And then she just starts reaching down, and a little more, and a little more, and I'm like, whoa, all right. And then she like starts, licking underneath the sack and stuff, and then just gets in the gooch, and then goes to town. And I'm like, oh my God, I did what? Do I say no? But I like it, so I'm gonna not. I'm just gonna not. All right. This is happening. This is happening. Okay. And then she, goes back up to my up to my dick, and then finishes off, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, Jesus, what the fuck? That was awesome. And I honestly didn't even know what to say. I was like, cool, that was amazing. So where do you live? And so I drive her back to her place, and she was like, so you're coming in, right? And I was like, damn, there's more? Okay, all right. So yeah, we go up in her place, and it's weird. It's like this old building that looks like at one point it could have been like an old folks home, and then whenever the city like gentrified more, they moved the old people out and put in like all the hipsters and shit, because they can charge them more money. Lived in one of those places, like in a studio apartment. And we get to her place, and this is like when the weirdness starts to unfold even more than it already has, with like first time encounter. And we go in her place, and I'm greeted by her little dog, and it's so cute, and it has 3 legs. I'm like, oh cool, it's so unique, that's awesome, and then as I walk further, I see this terrarium, and like I like terrariums, like I think they're fucking cool. But as I look inside, I see stuff moving around. I'm like, oh, this is actually has things in it. And I'm like, what are these? Are they? And I'm like, and then I realize they're hissing cockroaches. And I'm like, whoa. This girl has cockroaches as a pet. And I'm like, that's a niche pet if I've ever heard of one. And I'm like, I'm trying to roll with it, because she put in work for me. You know what I mean? She got in there. So I'm like, I'm not trying to just bolt, because there's more. And so I'm like, cool. And she's like, yeah, like I love them, like they're my little babies. And then she pulls them out and like lets them crawl on her face. And I'm just like, oh. She's like, yeah, they need to know my scent. And I'm like, oh, okay. I never took this girl as like a goth girl or anything like that. And then like there's all this like taxidermy and stuff like in there, and like I have no problem with taxidermy, but there is such a thing as too much taxidermy in your apartment. I feel like in an apartment, 3 is too many. Maybe even more than 1 is too many. Especially, I don't know, if you didn't actually hunt it or something. I don't know. It's weird. So anyways, I go and I lay down in the bed, and she's like, did you shower today? And I'm like, oh man, I must fucking stink, dude. Like, I have been working all day, and it was like, I had deliveries earlier today, so I was like loading kegs up and stuff, so I knew I was stinking a little bit. And this girl just ate my ass. Like, how are you gonna ask me that now? And I was like, no, like I kind of had a rough day, like I'm sorry if I stink. And she goes, no, it's okay. And she takes my shirt off, and she goes, I really just like pheromones. And I was like, what? And she started licking my armpits. She goes, oh, your left one is spicier than your right one. I'm like, is that good? Like, I don't know. And then she pulls out like some coconut oil and starts like jerking me off again. And I'm like, I've actually never had this with coconut oil. She goes, I love it because it tastes good. It makes you just want to eat your dick. And I was like, oh, all right. And then she just like goes to the point where she's deep throating and like just staring at me as she does it. And I'm just like, whoa, whoa. And then she's like, now I want you to put it in my ass. Put it in my ass and then put it back in my mouth. And I was just like, oh, okay. So we do that, and then I put it back in her mouth, and she's like, put it in there deeper, and I just want you to wring my Adam's apple. And I'm just like, I don't even know what to say. And like, I'm at the point where I'm like, this girl has mastered the talk of dirty talk and being dirty as a motherfucker. So, yeah, I finish up, and, I was just like, do I stay the night? And I was like, nah. At this point, it was already about like 5 in the morning, and I went down to my car, and she texted me as soon as I got back down to my car, and she was like, look up, and she was like waving out the window with her dog with 3 legs. She goes, hey, call me soon, okay? And I'm like, all right. And so, we had a fling, I guess, for about 2 weeks, and I honestly just kind of had to separate myself. Like, not that I like broke it off, I just kind of ghosted her. And it was weird, because like we're in the same circles and anything, and it was just like, I think that she felt that like I wasn't fully into it, but it was crazy, like she was just so fucking hot. And so I ended up dating this other girl for a little while, like probably about a year later, and I didn't know that Amanda was a regular at that girl's bar, the girl that I started dating after that. And the girl that I started dating, we'll call her Tiffany. It's not her real name either, but yeah, Tiffany worked at this bar, and I came in one day, and like Tiffany didn't have a car, so I drove her to work. So I drive her to work, and it was like a little diner with beer and shit, whatever, nice patio. So I'd come there and like drop Tiffany off at work, eat, maybe have a beer, just kind of chill out, and then I'd come back and get her later. And so I'm in there, and I go out to the back patio because I had our dog with us at the time, and I'm sitting out there, and Amanda is there, and I'm like, oh fuck, like I don't know what to say, what to do. And she walks over to me, and I play the polite card, hi, how are you doing, blah blah blah, this is my girlfriend's dog. She goes, oh, you're seeing somebody? And I was like, yeah, just recently I started seeing somebody. And she was like, well, I don't really know what happened, like we just kind of lost touch. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, like I felt like sometimes it's like I didn't hear from you, so I just thought you weren't really into me. And I was like, just played it like that. And she goes, I was really into you, but I'm glad you're with somebody else, and you're a really great guy, and like all this stuff. And she was like, the best of luck, I'll see you around. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I've just totally shocked, for ghosting somebody and them acting like that after doing those filthy things to me. And then never asking for it in return, which was the crazy thing. It was like that girl was built to like, I don't know, like it makes you wonder like what happened in her childhood to make her like that, you know what I mean? Like, but whew, that was a little much. But in turn, Tiffany saw her talking to me, and like she ran up and she didn't run up, but like after Amanda had walked through, Tiffany goes like, what the fuck was that all about? Like, what the fuck you talking to her for? She was a fucking girl from the East Coast and was not having it. And then, I was just like, we were co-workers, I used to work with her at my former job. She just came by to say hi because she saw the dog and she wanted to pet the dog. And she knew me. She goes, it seemed like it was a little more than that. She like touched you. And I was like, she touched my shoulder. I was like, we didn't even hug or anything. So she like kept pushing the issue, like, how do you know her, blah 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 blah, all this. And I tried to avoid it and just not tell her, because like I wasn't necessarily proud, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, I've had my salad tossed. Like, that's not something you tell like, your new girlfriend, and it's not something that I would ever ask them to do. If they're down to do it, all right, but like I'm not gonna ask you. And so my girlfriend Tiffany comes over to my house, and my roommates are all sitting there. And I had all, of course I told my fucking roommates about it as soon as it happened, because, I'm just that person. I don't keep anything as a secret from the boys. And so she comes over, and I don't really know how the topic came up. It was like some movie we were watching or some shit like that. And yeah, we were watching Clerks 2, and it came up. And then my buddy was like, like Amanda, right, Mikey? And I'm just like, are you fucking serious right now, dude? You're gonna say that? And then she's like, wait a minute, what? What happened? She goes, wait a minute. That's that one girl's name, that regular girl's name. She's like, that girl tossed your salad? And I was just like, yeah, we kind of dated for like 2 weeks, and she was like a little too much for me, and I kind of ghosted her. And that's the first time she's seen me since then. So I told her I had a girlfriend and that she worked here at that restaurant we were at. And that's whenever she walked away. And she was like, what the fuck? Your butt? Your butt's nasty. And I'm like, I know. And she goes, and then from then on, like, she felt so insecure. Every time she saw that girl, she'd just get upset. It was fucking ridiculous. But anyways, obviously Tiffany wasn't the girl for me. We ended up breaking up, and she kind of, I don't know, ruined my life for a little while. But we move on and move past all that shit, And then so like maybe a year after we broke up, I'm back on the prowl again, and I end up taking a trip to Portugal. And I'm supposed to go with my sister, but there's some complications. So I ended up being there by myself. And I've never traveled by myself, especially internationally. Kind of crazy. And when I'm there, it's the first time I've ever stayed at a hostel. And the whole idea of a hostel, like, kind of blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like, as an American, like, that we just don't do that. Like, I think people stopped doing that, like, whenever we had boarding houses in, like, the early turn of the century. Like, people stopped doing that shit here. But the tradition carries on over abroad. And so I stay at this hostel. It's the first time. And in my room that I'm in ends up being 4 girls. 2 French girls and 2 Irish girls and me. And I'm just like, what the fuck? How did I get so lucky, man? And I go out with the Irish girls, and we have a fucking badass time, dude. They're so fucking cool. Like, it's great. And whenever we come back to the hostel, there's some new people, I guess, that had checked in, not to my room, but I'm out on the terrace, and I'm like smoking a cigarette, looking at the river, and it's beautiful at night. And then this Italian girl walks up to me, and she's like, can you spare a cigarette? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Here you go. And I give it to her, and I'd also had some weed cartridges with me, so I'm out there smoking on my cart, and I was like, do you smoke weed? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, you want to try this? And I was like, it's like an e-cig, but with weed in it. And she's like, oh. And she like had some. She goes, wow, that's amazing. And she goes, my name's Millie. And I'm like, I'm Mikey, it's nice to meet you. And like, the thing was that I was so wasted that, like, I kind of browned out and didn't remember that till, like, later on, that I had even talked to this girl outside. So the next day, I wake up, and the Irish girls and the French girls had already checked out, and I'm, like, in the room by myself, and I'm like, alright, well, I wonder who's going to check in here next. And I go downstairs, and I'm like, can I get an extra night? And they're like, oh, actually, you have one more night here, and then we have the room booked out, so you'll have to find somewhere else to stay. So I had one more night, and I was like, all right. So I was, feeling a little lonely, and I really just wanted a steak. So I, like, Googled, like, where's the best steak close by that I can get. And it happened to be, like, on the other side of this river. So I'm like, all right, cool. I got nothing else to do. I'll take this ferry across over. And I go over there, and I go to this steak place, I guess, and I'm the only person there. And I order a giant steak and like all these sides and a whole bottle of wine. It was fucking amazing. And it was only like $25. God bless Portugal. And so I'd also brought like some weed gummies with me. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna pop one of these. I have my headphones on, and there was like this badass like seawall area that had a whole bunch of graffiti on it, like really awesome graffiti. And I'm fucking super stoned, and I'm full on the steak, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna walk down, and I'm gonna just check out all this graffiti. I'm gonna take some photos. So as I'm walking, I see this girl off in the distance, like waving, and I turn around. There's nobody behind me. I'm like, oh, this girl is actually fucking waving at me. Like, what the fuck? All right. So I walk up to him, and she goes, hey, you're at the hostel. My name is Millie, you remember? And I was like, oh yeah, hey, here's the Italian girl. And she has 2 other girls with her. And the other girls introduced themselves to me. And like, awesome. And then she was like, what are you doing by yourself? You want to walk with us? And I was like, yeah, sure. She goes, we're going to the Jesus. I'm like, excuse me? There's a giant Jesus statue in Lisbon. It's it's just like the one in Rio. I didn't really know that they had one too, but they do. And I was like, okay. I had nothing better to do, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go on an adventure with these girls. So we start walking for a bit, and then we sit down like on this grassy area by the river. And she goes, we're rolling a joint. You want to smoke with us? And I was like, hell yeah. But I didn't realize that in Europe they smoke spliffs and not all weed like we do here. So it was like, oh, that's alright. Like, it was cool, you know what I mean? But like, I don't know, man. Spliffs aren't for me, man. Give me all that weed, yo. But as we're sitting there, I'm like, here, why don't you try this? This is my cartridge. And the first girl, Millie, who had tried it the first day, she goes, it's strong, be careful. And so I give them all a hit. And one of the other girls is like, do you like acid? And I'm like, yeah, I love acid. And she goes, awesome, we're all about to take acid. We take the acid, and then we find her the Jesus. And I was like, yes. And we're just going to call her Acid Girl. Okay? And the other one doesn't really matter. Out of the 3, there's only 2 that matter. So anyways, we walk all the way up this hill. We all get all the way up to see the Jesus. And I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Because I'm like tripping on acid, and it looks like Jesus is staring at me and talking to me. And some people would be scared, but I was like having like this crazy, like weird religious experience where I'm just like, this is where I'm supposed to be right now in front of Jesus, talking to him. I'm like, I probably looked weird as shit. But anyways, the girls were awesome. They took me to like this Italian style bar after that, and we got super fucked up on like, what's it, Campari spritzes or whatever, gelato. And like the way Italians are just like, if you start buying drinks, they just start giving you food. It was awesome, dude. So that was great. And then so me and the girls end up splitting ways, but we get everybody's information, our Instagrams, whatever. And then fast forward to like a month later, I ended up missing my flight home and had to get a new flight home. And I had to go to London. And then that happened to be the city where the girls were living. And I'm like, I hit them up, and I'm like, hey, remember me? Like, we went on those adventures. And they were like, yeah, of course. And I was like, I'm coming to London. Like, I'll only be there for one night. Is there any way I can crash on your floor? Or something like that. Like, I don't know if I'll have money for a hostel and blah, 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 blah. And she's like, yes, of course. You're more than welcome to stay with us. And I'm talking to Millie, which is the first one I met, who is really super cool. So we get there, and she's like, I actually have to work all day, but I work at a brewery. You can come by, and I'll buy you a couple drinks, and you can hang out. And I was like, cool. And I was like, I just don't know where to sleep. And Acid Girl was like, yeah, come here, upstairs. So I go upstairs, and then she shows me the bathroom and stuff like that. and it has a bidet in it. She goes, "Oh yes, I have a bidet, very clean, and all this other stuff." And I like totally brushed it off, and I was like, "Okay, cool. Never tried one before. Why not? I might." And never one like that. You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those old school ones. It kind of looks like a water fountain, but lower. Like, I've had one of like the Japanese like electric ones with a remote. Those are badass. But I never had one of the old school manual ones. I'd probably be too worried I'd spray the shit out of my ball. Anyways, and she goes, "This is my room. This is where you stay." And I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "Yes, in the bed, in the bed." And I was like, "Okay." So anyways, she actually gave me a little bit of weed, and she walked me around and took me to this area where I can get a bus card. And she like helped me get a bus card and like a train card and like all this shit. And she was like, "Okay, like this is how you get around, blah 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 blah." And I have to go to work, and I'll meet you later. And I was like, "Okay." So I go around and I get real drunk, and I ended up finding my way back and all that other stuff. And then, we go out to have a bar, and we're hanging out there. And then I don't know how it came up, but, it came to like, one of the girls goes, "You never go ass to mouth." And then I go, "Unless you're there to eat ass." And they all laughed and had a little chuckle about it. Me not even thinking much of that, saying that. We get back to the apartment, we smoke another joint with the girls. And then I go upstairs with the acid girl, and we get up there, and she starts making out with me and all this other shit, and I'm like, "Dude, this is awesome. My last night in Europe, I'm gonna get laid. This is great." So we're doing that, and like, she's beautiful and all this stuff, and we start hooking up, and then she just whispers in my ear, "Now eat my ass." And I'm just like, I'm so taken back by it. But then I remember, it's like, you shouldn't advertise if you ain't gonna deliver. And that's my story, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I know it was long, but I appreciate it.